All right, everybody. We are now live with Noak. Um, it's a great pleasure to have you on the podcast. It's been a while since I had something like that. A technical guest, and it's great to see you here, Noak. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Of
I'm doing
course,
well.
of course. It's a great pleasure of mine to have a fellow Toronto DAO member here on the podcast, and of course, you are the architect behind the T coin, the famous T coin that we've been working very hard on, especially for the Futurist Conference hackathon. So I would love to talk a little bit about that, but also I wanted to start this podcast by asking a question about you because you have been in the industry for quite some time in the tech industry. So I just wanted to ask you, like, what brought you to tech? And most importantly, I know that you are a fellow immigrant, so I wanted to ask you, like, how was that experience for you as well? So wherever you want to start, please do, sir. I'd love to
Hmm.
listen.
Yeah, it's interesting to be referred to as techie because even though I've been in IT strategy for a long time, I've always been on the strategy side and had developers and architects and whatnot be the techs, and I was the non-tech. But lately, I guess I've taken on more and more of the tech role as well, and that's how part of the community has come to see me now because I can speak that language too. But that's not my my normal role. It has been in the last couple of years, but before then, not at all. So that's a an interesting pivot, right?
What was that pivot like? Like,
I
because
like change.
I see
I
you as
like
a
change.
coder, right? Like I see you as someone who codes and stuff like that. Because I'm always kind of like asking you those kind of questions. But now I'm hearing that you weren't even into that at the beginning. So what's
No,
that?
no. I mean, the first 25 years of my career, like I started back in Stockholm at an office at Accenture, which was then Anderson Consulting, and we did do the first 2 weeks. They threw us into coding, and we had to learn C++, and everyone was complaining and bitching and moaning because we thought we were going to do strategy, um, and um, and they said, well, you can't do it if you don't know the details. So they taught us the details. But since then, I hadn't touched code much at all. I did some Visual Basic for Excel. I actually ran 3 factories for Ericsson, which then became Sony Ericsson. I ran the full MRP planning for 3 factories in Excel using Visual Basic. This
That's
is
crazy.
before ERP systems, so I'm dating myself here. So I did a little bit of coding then, and then 25 years without touching code at all, and now I'm back into it, and I'm really liking it. So
Interesting.
yeah, that was a bit of
Interesting.
a pivot in the last 3-4 years.
That is very impressive because a lot of people say like it's hard to teach, old dog new tricks. Not to say that you're an old dog,
No, I
but
am one. I got enough gray in my beard to be called an old dog.
yeah, but it's very inspiring because, even if you like for everyone who's listening or watching, if you don't know how to code, but you feel like it's too late for you, there it is, Noak as your example basically and prove that it's possible to just kind of like restructure yourself and focus more on the technical part. Um,
100%, and not necessarily very good, but I do want to point out that I did that pivot before AI. So AI is what, a year now, and I started that pivot like 3 years ago. So I did do it without AI, but oh my goodness, when AI came along, how much easier it is.
so it definitely
So
helps you out more right now, like just to accelerate your coding. How exactly
it,
is that helping you?
it helps me a lot. Like I so I do pseudo code for my developers. Before before they get into it, I research it with ChatGPT and I tell ChatGPT this is what I want to do. This is generically the problem statement, and it helps me structure what kind of components I need to build and what the function calls need to be, and parameters, arguments, whatnot. So I do that. I take copy paste that into like a Word document and I send it off to my developers, and then they build it. That's how it started with ChatGPT, and now since then, now I'm using GitHub Copilot, and it just it it's essentially it's magic. I just tell it what I want to do, and then it codes it and it adds it into my code. It's not necessarily the best code. There are a lot of developers that are going to say that it's not good code, but it's 80% there. It's 90% there. It's pretty good.
Gets the job done. Is that a free service, Copilot, GitHub?
No, Copilot's paid.
Okay, got it. Interesting. I got to check that out.
GPT is free, or you can have a paid service too. I use the paid service, but yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And you mentioned that you've started at Stockholm. So is that where you're from?
I'm from Gothenburg. I'm from the west coast of Sweden, and Stockholm's on the east coast. But my first job was in Stockholm.
What was it like to grow up in Sweden?
What was it like? It was very much like Canada, except not speaking English and not using dollars. It's very similar. Everyone asks me what the difference is, but the similarities are what's striking. Like we have the same socialistic kind of thinking, free healthcare, free roads, open democracy, all of that stuff. So it's very, very similar to Canada.
And what caused you to come to Canada?
Girls. I married one and gave birth to another one, and my wife at the time wanted to move to Canada, so we moved.
Oh, nice.
Before we had our second kid.
And do you have any regrets about moving to Canada? Would you rather stay in Sweden or Canada?
No regrets at all. I mean, it does get hard, and the older you are, the more you think about the future of family and whatnot. So that's the only regret. Like I'm very far away from my family. But other than that, Canada's great and it's treating me very well, and I'm happy here.
Yeah, I definitely can relate to that, with family being so far away. That's amazing. So I know that, you're an architect behind Tcoin, but you're also like doing other projects as well. And I guess my question is, like, you're managing several projects at once. Can you give like a brief explanation on each project? And then I'd like to ask you, like, where are you focusing the most? Or I guess like the project
that's my main gripe right now. I'm trying to run too many things, and none of them being run very well. But yeah, I'm running a ton of different things. All of them which started with the ultimate, idea that I wanted to help do something better for society. That's what I pivoted to when I got out of Accenture. I wanted to do something better for society. And the thing that's better that I found was universal basic income. I listened to this podcast at one point, and the question was asked, what's the meaning of life? And the best answer that I heard was, find the biggest challenge that you could think of that would make society better, make for a better life, and pick up the burden and carry it forward as far as you can. And so I figured, what is the biggest challenge that I can think of that I could potentially help with my skill set from tons of years in consulting and whatnot. And I found universal basic income. I wanted to make not rich people richer anymore. I've said that a couple of times, different settings. But I wanted to make everyone richer instead. And the way to do that is universal basic income. Not everyone may agree with the principle, but I think that's going to be like the savior of society. Once the robots get here, like all the AI takes our jobs and whatnot.
Would you say the UBI is the common denominator for
that's the common denominator. Yeah. So I got into I researched and I found like the best couple of UBI projects at the time. One of them, the best one that I figured was Good Dollars. So I talked to them and I said, I want to help you guys, and I did. So I worked with them for a year almost, and helped them with going multi-chain and their growth strategy and a couple of different things. And then we sort of parted ways for various reasons. One was that we had different ideas. So they wanted to become like the best and the only universal basic income scheme, where I think that there should be one for every blockchain, every project, everything that's mildly profitable should have a UBI component to it. So we should have 1 million different UBI projects. And what stops people from doing it isn't. So in blockchain, we make magic internet money, right? We make magic internet money out of nothing. So finding money isn't really the problem. It's a bit of a challenge, but it's not the biggest challenge. The biggest challenge is to stop Sybil attacks. So Sybil attack is when one person creates more than one account to get more benefit than they should be getting. For example, if you want to swing a vote, you create 10 different accounts and you vote 10 times. That's not good. That's a Sybil attack. And the same thing happens when you give out money for free. So
I'm sorry, is it called Sybil or Civil?
Sybil. Sybil was the first woman to ever be diagnosed with bipolar, or no, not bipolar, but multiple personality disorder.
Mm-hmm.
So she had multiple personality disorder, and thereafter, the technical hacking attack on a system is also called Sybil attack, when someone portrays themselves as more than one person.
Okay, that kind of makes sense then. So that's it's connected to this problem because you don't want to double dip basically in some pots.
This poor woman, Sybil, got to name, just like Karen got to name another phenomenon. Maybe she wasn't so poor, Karen, but Sybil definitely was. Anyways, yeah, so Sybil attack is the biggest problem in order to create that. And then so I figured, I could solve the Sybil attack problem with background in IT strategy and multiple years of challenging issues being thrown at me and helping to solve them. So this is the one that I picked up. And I did that by moving to Near. I found a sponsor that wanted to build something similar to me, to what I want to do. So we ended up building something called I Am Human. And that sort of became the genesis of my new career track, which is building Sybil-proof protocols.
So it's funny. It's just to interrupt you. You're approaching the UBI question from the technical point of view, because a lot of people see it as a political movement, right? It's a controversial political issue. As far as I can see it, maybe some other people see it differently, but for me, it's most importantly like it's politics. But you're approaching it from the technical perspective. You're more of like, well, let's build it first, and like assuming that it's already like agreed upon, like let's do the tech behind it. Does the whole political controversy, like, does that, bother you at all? Like, are you arguing with a lot of people about this?
Good question. So yes, absolutely. I am approaching it from a technical perspective and, build it and they will come kind of thing. Because if you build free money, then who's not going to come? Of course, they're going to come. So solve the technical challenges first. But I also wanted to work on a political spectrum, and I did. So there's a company or a movement in Ontario called UBI Works, which is headed up by a great guy, a friend of mine, called Floyd Marinesco. And they're lobbying organization. They're trying to promote universal basic income, and they're doing it from a national perspective or even a provincial sometimes. And that's the right way of doing it. It's just that it's going to take so long time, and it's running into so many challenges before you do anything, right? So if they're in the unlikely case that they're successful, to convince the politicians to build a UBI protocol for all of Canadians, that'd be amazing, and that's the way to do it. And then we can fund it from taxpayer dollars or something, right? And then we can give a significant amount in one chunk to people. There was Andrew Yang with the Forward Party in the U.S. He proposed $1,000 per month. So just pick a number, and he picked the number $1,000 a month, and he ran fairly well as a third party in the U.S. for a long time. In the last election, and didn't, obviously, third parties never go anywhere in the U.S. So
right.
that just trickled out. But it was he had great ideas about how to do it, and I very much support it. And I support UBI Works and Floyd. I've been to the marches and whatnot to lobby for it, and I've been to meetups with them. Participated in discussions online and in real life. But ultimately, I think it's going to take too long and it's too hard. And I'm glad that they're doing it, and I will help whenever. But my philosophy is, well, first of all, build it and they will come. And so build a technical solution and they will come. And then hopefully someone will fund it, right? Maybe there's a philanthropist like Elon or Bill Gates, or one of those guys would see the value and they would fund it, and then we would spin off from there. Maybe a government would like it, would see that, hey, it's a hard problem to solve. They've solved it. Let's put some money into them, and they can feed the masses, right? In my country. So that's one option. One reason why I want to do it. The other reason is that poverty it transcends borders. So I want to build a global solution rather than a local solution. I don't like borders. I don't understand borders. And if we're going to address a lot of the majorly flawed concepts of money and capitalism and socialism, for that matter, too, we need to look beyond borders. Just such a thing as taxation, right? Why do we have income tax? Income tax is like arguably the worst tax. We're penalizing people for doing good work. Like, taxes should penalize bad things, not good things. So abolish income taxes would be the ideal, right? But then we have to have another tax to replace it. And what would that be? Well, that could be, like, a lot of people argue for wealth tax. You can't have wealth tax if you have borders, because then the rich people are going to move. I would argue for something else. I would argue for land value tax. I would argue for inheritance tax rather than wealth tax. But you can't do inheritance tax either if you have borders. So you have to solve these things from a international perspective, maybe a coalition of countries, something like that. And universal basic income is certainly one of those things that you want to solve internationally. You don't want to solve it locally from an idealistic perspective. Like, obviously, a lot of people are going to be patriots to their local province, territory, state, or country. So we might have to appease them and do something locally just in order to get it started. But the ideal ultimate solution would be to do UBI on a global level.
You just said a lot of things that might get a lot of people angry. Like, literally, like, controversial things that I know, like, people will say, like, well, this is socialism, as you also kind of admitted that, Canada is kind of in a socialistic spectrum. Um, is that something, like, you feel like can be accomplished in your lifetime, or is this something that we will have, like, 100 years from now? And do you feel like maybe AI accelerated this process right now in thoughts about UBI?
Oh yeah, it's absolutely accelerated. OpenAI has a side project, a pet project called WorldCoin, because their initial idea, when say a lot of things about Elon if you want, but he was part of the founding fathers of OpenAI, and he named it OpenAI because he wanted to be open. And now all of a sudden it's become as closed source as anything else, and it was supposed to be distribute the wealth that it generates to everyone, and it doesn't. And now it just distributes it to the very few people that are involved. So it's very unfortunate that way. But they do still have the principle of ultimately wanting to become so profitable that they can start distributing their profit to everyone. And when they do, they would use their WorldCoin project, which was started back then as a Y Combinator project. The first one for Sam Altman, actually, that's how he got started before OpenAI. He started WorldCoin, and they're still very much alive and strong. And they want to distribute their wealth that's generated from OpenAI to everyone through universal basic income by using WorldCoin. So it's a possibility. And now they've sort of changed it to give universal basic compute rather than universal basic income, which is a great idea too. But I wanted to say too that I don't necessarily believe that we should give everyone a ton of money, like the $1,000 a month. That's probably idealistic. I think that we should give enough so people don't starve. Maybe give them enough to buy a meal a day, and start there. Right, start really small. Start with $10 a day or something like that to just not have people starve. And then you have to get a job and you have to earn your income if you want to get ahead in life and get rich, or even buy more than the very basic necessities. But we should cover the basic necessities with UBI. And I say that because there's so much admin that goes into the social assistance programs today. There's like detectives to figure out, can you walk or are you just faking it? And the admin cost, the overhead cost of that is just astounding. It'd be so much more efficient to just give people the basic amount every day and abolish like unemployment insurance and social assistance programs, all of that crap. Just give it to everyone. Because if you are poor, it will help a ton, and you don't have to fight to you don't have to pretend to be poor and pretend to not have a job and pretend to whatever, right? You can just get the money and then go to work, right? So you can get both the money and go to work. So right now we have a poverty trap that's created by the social assistance programs, where you have to first be poor and then you get money. But if you get a job, then you don't get the money anymore, right? So that's a poverty trap that would be abolished, would be just annihilated with UBI. So that's really, really powerful for those that need it, and it doesn't matter to those that don't need it, because if you and I, we have enough already, and if we get a little bit more, it disappears. Like we don't even notice it. So it's more fair, it's better, and it's more efficient. So I'm for a small UBI.
It's definitely an extremely complex issue. I feel like, for example, if I am already making enough money, but I'm still getting that $10, and there's like 20,000 of people like me, or like thousands and hundreds of that, like all of that money basically goes to waste, right? Because I don't care about that $10, but someone
it doesn't go to waste. It circulates. You pay that in income, so in tax. So your taxes might go up $10, and you get $10 back, but it's so efficient in circulating that it doesn't matter.
Interesting.
You lose like less than a cent in that circulation, and money is supposed to circulate. We'll get to that later. Like money is supposed to circulate. Velocity money is good. Right now we're seeing economies stagnate and velocity money going down, and it brings a lot of different issues. So money, my mother always said that money is round. The coins are round because they're supposed to roll. They're supposed to circulate.
That's interesting. So one question about that as well. I mean, obviously we live in Canada and it's still a capitalistic society, and same like with the United States, of course. So we run on capitalism. Do you feel like with UBI, the capitalism will no longer have that steam? Like we're all incentivized to produce and to create new things, innovate.
That's a great question.
What's going to happen to innovation?
A lot of people get stuck on that the socialistic aspect of UBI, but I would argue that UBI is ultimately capitalist. It's like the most capitalist thing you could possibly do. And why do I say that? But the signal, the production signal that we give today to factories is to make more Gucci bags and Prada, because those are the people that can pay. We don't give the signal to the factory, and the signal is, what do people buy, right? So the more poor people we have, the more that can't buy the basic necessities of life anymore, the more skewed our signal becomes. And the signal to the capitalistic manufacturing complex is to make more elite stuff and don't make the basic necessities that's important, like meat and cotton for clothes, right? So in order to restore the capitalistic principles and the signal that capitalism gives to manufacturers, you have to give people money. Ford, and even Henry Ford knew this. Like he knew that he had to pay his workers a decent salary because they were going to be the buyers of his cars. If he didn't pay his workers a decent salary, no one would buy his cars. Right, so we have to do that too, and we've gotten away from this decent salary and having everyone gainfully employed. Now we're in a place where we have to force employers to pay a minimum income, right? And that's absolutely horrid. We shouldn't have a political intervention to say what minimum income is. Like everyone should be paid a decent salary, and if people don't have money, which they won't soon, if the fears of AI come true and AI takes over everything and no one gets to work, then no one will have a job, and we'll just blame them. Oh my God, they're drug addicts, right? And it's got to be an an underlying issue why they're so poor. No, why are people poor? They're poor because they don't have money, right? And what's the problem? What's the solution to that problem? Is it give them housing or give them training to get a job? No, the easiest solution for someone that's poor, someone that doesn't have money, is just give them money. Just give people money, and then they will figure out what to buy. They will be the ultimate deciders, and that's like the basic principles of capitalistic society and a free democratic society, is that the individual is the ultimate responsible person, right? That's why we gave everyone a vote without getting a test first. Can you vote? But we gave everyone a vote, and because we believe in individuals. And the same thing holds true for money. You give people money, they're not going to buy drugs and they're not going to buy alcohol. Maybe a small percentage will, but you know what? You and I buy drugs and alcohol too. I buy alcohol and I can drink. So why couldn't they drink? Of course they could drink. But the main message is, people get money. They don't buy alcohol and drugs. They buy babysitting services so they can go to work. They buy a suit so they can go to work. So it's the ultimate capitalistic solution.
Definitely a deep conversation. I wish we could talk about it more, because there's a lot of variables that I'd love to discuss, but we don't have a lot of time right now. Let's pivot to Toronto Coin, which is another project that you're working on in conjunction with Toronto DAO. And I just want you to kind of like give us like one sentence, one paragraph, and like kind of like maybe a little bit more extensive version of what it is, like what's the goal of it, and the stages, like where it is right now, and like how are you feeling about the project now, kind
100%.
of being deep dive?
So as you can tell, like I've been down the rabbit hole of what is money for a while, and I wanted to make it better money. And if you're going to pay people a global money, then why don't you design a better global money? So Toronto Coin is one solution to that, and better money is one way of calling it. Toronto Coin is a community currency. It's going to be a community currency in Toronto, and it will be pegged to something that's really stable. So what makes money good? There are many things that makes money good. I can point to like 70 different variables that make it good, but ultimately money is digitized trust. And you want it to have a stable value. So Bitcoin's not money because it fluctuates in value. Bitcoin's an asset and a store. It's a digital gold, but gold also isn't money because it fluctuates in value, and it's you can't carry it around in your pocket. Canadian dollar and US dollars are, we call them fiat. They are better money because you can use them and you can divide them into cents and add them into $100 bills. You can carry them in pocket, you can circulate, and people trust. But they've got an issue. And that issue is that they're in a free fall. So we've been taught to call it inflation. It's not really inflation of goods and services. It's deflation of the currency. That's what's happening. And right now it's happening at like a pace of 7-8% after COVID here, which is free fall. So Toronto Coin is pegged to something that's way more stable in value. And we have one of those things here in Toronto, and that's the TTC token. It used to be called TTC token. It used to actually be a little coin, little token, gold and silver.
What is a TTC for people who don't know?
TTC is Toronto Transit Commission. So it's a full fare in our public transit. It's taking me from A to B in
so buses, streetcars, metro, subway.
Yeah, subway. Yeah, Get on at one place, get off at a different place. That's the value that it gives you. You can travel around for 2 hours in the city of Toronto and the outskirts of Toronto. Now it's called a full fare, but it's the same thing as the TTC token. So and when that one launched, almost 100 years ago, it was sold at $7. 7 cents. Right now it's priced at $3.30. right? So people think that that's inflation. Oh my God, it's inflated in value. But stand back and think about it. No, it hasn't inflated in value. It's the same, exact same values. Take me from A to B in 2 hours. It was that then, 100 years ago, and it's that now.
And for the purposes of time, okay, we have already like I think 5 minutes left for this call because this is the pre-Zoom version.
We got to do another one.
So if we're gonna do another one next time, we'll do part two. But so the TTC token is a soft peg to Tcoin is soft peg to TTC token.
Yeah.
How exactly is it going to like? What's the utility? How is it going to help Torontonians? In 2 minutes or less, please.
Having a local currency brings pride and joy to locals. One thing. There are examples of local currencies being bought by tourists and taken home because look at this little cute thing. But it's actually way better than that. So we give 3% of transactions to charity. And it's got to be a local charity. And it's a charity that you pick as the user, right? So that's a huge thing. There used to be a coin in Toronto that did a similar thing, and they raised about $200,000 in the few years that they existed to local charities, and a very, very small pilot. If we get that to be adopted across Toronto, like we can get millions to local charities. The other thing is that it circulates locally, so it has value locally, which means that we lose less to low-cost countries like China, Philippines, whatnot, and more stays local, right? So that's a huge benefit as well. Buy local, all of that stuff. So it's very, very popular in like farmers market type of circles. It's a good thing for those, but it can be expanded to any shop, any store, anywhere.
Well, this is definitely something that we have to discuss more. We should do a part two for this because I want to ask more questions, not just because, I want listeners to understand what it is, but I myself, I
Yeah.
feel like can benefit from that. And I already have some ideas in terms of the app that we're developing. For example, indicating that charity selection in the app for the T-coin is something that I haven't thought of that, but you probably already did.
Yep.
So that's definitely something that I'd love us to discuss during our internal meetings, but also on the podcast as well.
We got tons. I can talk about
Of
Tcoin for
course,
hours.
of course. So Noak, how can people learn more about Tcoin and your other projects? Obviously, you're involved in several other projects that you discussed previously. Where can they
Yeah, we
find that
didn't even get to
information?
start talking about those. The membership app for Toronto DAO that became something different and something better. I've got a proof of personhood project that I'm running. I got lots of them. Reach out to me, or check out chaincrew.xyz or tcoin.me or sparechange.tips or qubit.me. All of these projects have a little website. I haven't really put them together yet, but they're all out
I'll
there.
I'll force you to put everything together because I will put that in the show notes for people to check out. Noak, thanks so much for being on Azizi Podcast. It was a true pleasure to converse with you. You're such a intelligent guy, and it's definitely like such a high quality conversation that I really, really appreciate. So thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.